It's like a lot of organizations right now, it's like they're rolling out high-end Ferraris, but not teaching anybody how to drive. And that's just a waste of money.
Welcome to Your Work Friends. I'm Francesca.
And I'm Mel.
We are breaking down work so you get ahead. Mel, what's the good word?
I'm heading to Rhode Island and excited for that. How about you?
Very nice. Pretty chill over here.
I showed Robbie the picture of Enzo on the first day of first grade and the last day of first grade.
For those of you who don't know, I have a 7-year-old. He started first grade with a shaved head. He ended first grade with this mop of curls, a gold chain, dressed in all black. He either looks like he's a sophomore in college at like USC or is going to start really getting into Creed sometime soon. I don't know. Like, it's all over the map.
I love his style evolution.
We let him dress the way he wants to dress. Like, he picks out all of that. Like, he
That's
asked for a chain. We got it from like TJ Maxx or something. It's not like he has a real gold chain or anything like that. But it's interesting watching your kid make choices.
Yeah, it's just fun to watch their personalities evolve. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I think it's really cool. But
I do too. I will allow him to wear anything but Skechers. My child will not be wearing Skechers.
What's your beef with Skechers?
I cannot. I cannot stand that brand. I don't know what it is.
What? What is up with Skechers?
It's like a joke. It's like a joke. I don't appreciate it. It's not real.
Funniest beef.
Oh my God. Every once in a while, especially when he was younger, he'd pick some up and some of them they would light up underneath. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I will let my kid wear the craziest shit except for Skechers. Absolutely not. No.
I love it. Speaking of style, we launched some merch on our website. Yeah. We are independent and we want to keep it that way. But if you feel so inclined, check out some of the merch that we put up there. We thought there's some pretty cool designs over there to check. Any purchase that you make helps us stay operational. So appreciate your support. And you get a cool hat or sweatshirt or something.
Good hats for summer, sunscreen, it all works out.
It's all good stuff. We had such a great conversation earlier this week with Jacqueline Carter. She's an author, speaker, a senior partner, and a director for the North America Potential Project. She's an expert in leadership development, mindsets, and corporate culture. And she just came out with this book, More Human. This is an opportunity, right, for us to lean into our humanity in the workplace and really see AI as a partner, but also taking some precaution as we go through this evolution. What did you take away from this conversation?
We've been talking about the future of work and AI, and even things like, we have to lean into our deeply human skills for the last 10 years. This is not something that's new. What I think is so different about what Jacqueline and More Human, the book, and the Potential Project are talking about is they're making it really easy to lean into those more human skills that you really need to in this conversation and also in the book. Jacqueline outlines this trifecta of how to make yourself a more human leader as technology takes on more and more of work. How do you lean into that humanity? That trifecta being awareness, wisdom, and compassion. And I love that because you and I have both seen this. These deeply human skills is a laundry list of 30, 40, 50. And you're just like, Jesus Christ, how many do I have? These are the top 3. If you're going to do any, do these.
Yeah, I really liked that. I also liked the concept of moving away from either or. You could either have AI or humans. You can't have both, but this is a both and conversation. There's just a lot of power in that. Everybody's going through this shift. I don't think I get any news alerts that don't involve AI in the title these days. But if you and your team are moving through, this is a definite book to check out. With that, we think you should check this conversation out. So here's Jacqueline.
So I think every day, maybe multiple times a day, I'm asking somebody, sometimes jokingly, what timeline are we living in? Because it just feels like some fascinating times for various reasons, but really amazing times for opportunity. And I'm looking at this moment in time around AI, this moment in time around humanity. What made you see this as a moment in time, as like a fork in the road, especially for leadership?
So, as you guys know, I'm part of an organization that's a potential project. We are a research and leadership development organization, and we've been focusing on researching and supporting leaders in global companies to be able to enhance their potential for the past 15 years. And what we're really excited about is we really do see this is an amazing moment in time in terms of human leadership. And when we look at it, we really see that with artificial intelligence, and specifically, of course, generative AI, we have the opportunity to really make this major shift from management, which none of us really liked, to be able to lift into leadership, which is really about elevating our ability to be able to enable other people to realize more of their potential. And I think that's the big, if we're able to navigate this, we really see a potential opportunity for a future of work that is really quite inspiring. And I think one that could be really quite hopeful and flush with possibilities. At the same time, we also see a lot of darkness. And I think that's really why it's never been more important to be a leader. And it's never been more important as a leader to be able to lean into the kind of choices that we need to make about the future of leadership.
One of the things I'm curious about is you mentioned these more human kind of aspects of things. Like we have this opportunity to really reach this different level of leadership potential. How do you define more human in an AI powered world? What does that look like?
We come at it very much from a research and data perspective. So, what we've done, like I said, over the past 15 years is really distilled what we see as being three core qualities of leadership excellence in terms of being able to bring the best of our human potential. And they're going to sound simple, but simple is not easy. And they're going to sound like common sense, but common sense is not always common practice. So, fundamentally, the first core quality is awareness, being able to be aware of what's going on internally and also aware of what's going on around. The second core quality is wisdom. And this is very different than knowledge, but wisdom is basically the discerning capacity of mind to be able to discern what's happening so that I can make wise choices. And the third core quality is compassion. And compassion, the way we define it, is to be able to do the really hard things that we need to do as leaders, but to be able to do them in a human way. So when I operate with compassion, say I'm able to give really tough feedback, but do it in a way that helps you to be able to hear it so that it supports you in your development journey, as opposed to you feeling degraded and depressed. And what we see from a data perspective is that only 16% of leaders are really ready to be able to lean into these core skills that we believe are critical in the age of AI. 60% have potential, but 24% probably really shouldn't be leaders. I think we've all seen leaders that have been promoted because they had great technical skills, but they really don't have these human skills that we know are critical for the future. Not only be able to leverage the benefits of AI and overcome the risks, but we know there's going to be massive transformation in the world of work in the coming years. And we need leaders who can really lean into those human elements to be able to guide the workforce and create the work context of the future.
First of all, those data points resonate. I think all of us that have worked, especially in corporate, you're like, yeah, that tracks. That tracks. In terms of maybe you haven't had a leader that leads with awareness, wisdom, and compassion, or maybe you had one and you remember them for the rest of your life, right? They just make or break your work experience. We're not seeing a lot of organizations invest in what we would call these deeply human skills yet. To your very good point, only a small percentage of people are ready. Most people aren't getting trained in those. I'm curious about that moment in time where the mindset shifts, where people start to pull in that direction. What does that look like? What's that mindset shift that separates someone that has that AI augmented leader trifecta of awareness, wisdom, and compassion? What is that shift that people are making?
Yeah, I do love that you point out that not enough organizations are investing in it. And that's one of the things that we feel very privileged is we, of course, work with many global companies that are actually prioritizing the human development aspect in parallel with the AI advancements. And I think when we see organizations that say, yes, we've got to be able to roll out the technology, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we emphasize the human. The way that we see that is like a lot of organizations right now, it's like they're rolling out high-end Ferraris, but not teaching anybody how to drive. And that's just dumb. That's just a waste of money. And so the light bulb for us really goes on for leaders is when, these aspects of awareness, wisdom, and compassion, and that's why I said they're common sense, is because when you dive into them, we all innately have these capabilities. It's whether we have the permission to be able to develop them, the permission to be able to see the benefit. And we, again, look at it very much from a research and data perspective. Leaders that have these high awareness, wisdom, and compassion are able to create the conditions where people feel more empowered, where greater trust, greater performance, greater job engagement. When you create the conditions where people know that there's a prize at the end, and at the same time, you give them a path to be able to support them in that development. Oh, I can develop compassion. Yeah, I may have a set point where I'm good or not good, but there's a journey, and I can see how to be able to take that journey and to be able to be supported along the way.
Yeah. I really love too, by the way, that it's 3. Having been in talent development my entire career, and we've been seeing this, the deeply human skills that you're going to need, it's a laundry list. It's typically a laundry list of at least 10. And to be able to have this distilled down into a framework of, look, this is the 3 that will reap the most benefits that you really need to be focusing on. Huge. One question that might be a little controversial, I'm going to just ask it. Here we go. All these organizations are investing heavily in tech, but not in the human aspect of it, buying a Ferrari and not having someone know how to drive. Would you say people need to invest in the human first, or they are better suited to invest in teaching people how to drive first before they buy the car?
I love the question, because one of the other things that we found in our research, and it was a little bit surprising to us, was that if you just and we call them human purists. So let's say if you just invest in the human, which we were like, yay, this would be so great. Imagine an organization that just invested in the human. And we're like, this would be awesome. But the reality is that the smartest human being is a little bit smarter when they leverage AI. So it really does have to be a both and. And that was, I think, one of the key insights that we came is this paradox. So the journey, we believe you need to start with the human, because if the human, like great tools in unskilled hands are not great tools. Like you can do a lot of damage with a hammer, or you can build a house with a hammer. So you need to be able to have the right skills. So you need to invest in the human development. But the opportunity now is to augment these great human capacities that we have, but we can augment them with AI. My awareness enhances when I leverage AI. My wisdom enhances when I leverage AI. My compassion even enhances when I leverage AI. So it's really a both and from our perspective.
I'd love to drill down further into what each of these look like in practice alongside AI, because in the book, there were some really good case studies, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Awareness, when you think about that skill set, that human capability, what does that look like daily alongside the use of AI tools?
Absolutely. Definitions are always important, because awareness can sound like a really big word, but the way that we look at awareness is the ability to, like I said, be aware of what's going on internally, and at the same time be aware to the extent that I can of what's going on externally. And we know, let's just take a simple example, situational awareness, right? It's been for many leaders for a long time, we've been told that not everybody is the same. And so we need to be able to be situational. Mel, what you like is different, Francesca, than what you like. But that's really hard. Like, how can I, as a mere human, be able to really keep track of, oh, when I communicate to Mel, it's a little bit different than when I communicate to other members of my team. And these are the kinds of things that AI is really good at. AI is really good at being able to track what Mel is, what's important to you, what kind of messages resonate with you, as opposed to what would be useful for other employees. And so again, and that's why that awareness of being able to be more aware of what's happening with my employees, what's important to them, can really then enhance me. My awareness is lifted. And these are just some examples, but we also see like sentiment analysis. I sent out an email to my organization. AI tools can let me know, was it opened? Did anybody read it? How long did they read it for? When they responded, if they responded, what was the sentiment associated with that response? And this is gold because this can then enable me to be able to enhance my ability to communicate more effectively. And I think these are just some examples, but that's again from an external perspective. But then from an internal perspective, AI can help to be able to challenge me on maybe my biases, on my limitations, on my blind spots, to be able to support me in a development journey if I'm open to that. So these are just, again, some of the ways, but we just see it's a really an amazing tool to be able to support enhancing my awareness.
Awareness and wisdom and compassion are all critically important, right, for the future, for this to be successful. But it stood out to me. It felt like compassion might be more of the linchpin here, because I think you had mentioned it's the one thing that AI can't replicate. What crystallized that for you from your research?
Yeah, and I would say the way that we see awareness, wisdom, compassion, they're all linked, right?
Yeah.
It's how neurologically, how the theory of mind, how the mind works. Like we perceive, then we discern, and then we respond. And so, very much that responsive capacity of mind in an ideal world for leaders that want to be effective is compassion, right? To do those hard things and do it in a human way. And what's super interesting is that we really have been, with great interest, following the advances of AI. We know that right now people actually prefer and sometimes feel like an AI chatbot is more empathetic than a busy leader, right? Which is not surprising because an AI chatbot has all the time in the world to say, "Oh, Mel, I'm so sorry that you're having that problem. How can I help?" and isn't rushed to be able to get to the next meeting. But the key thing, and I think the reason why, Mel, to your question, why it's the most important is because even as AI gets better and better at being able to mimic human emotions, it's programmed, of course, with all the intelligence that we know around emotional intelligence, around human psychology, human behavior. Fundamentally, human beings were social beings. Like we feel each other, we thrive based on each other. And fundamentally, even though, and this was so interesting, what the research shows is even though people found that the AI chatbot was more engaging, they felt empty inside. They felt fooled when they found out that it was an AI chatbot, because fundamentally human beings prefer messy but authentic other human beings than perfect, programmatic, empathetic AI.
Yeah. Of course, in the news, just like when video games were villainized, right? You think of some of the horror stories that are also coming out as well, because AI is essentially acting as a mirror of the person who's using it. It's interesting. I'm curious about these three pillars, because you mentioned, what was it? 16% have these skills and 60% can use some training on it. That's a pretty big gap. And then 24% who are never going to get there.
Yeah.
Of these three pillars, which do you feel people struggle with the most?
Yeah, I love that question. And maybe I'll just say this, and I hope it's okay. But what we did find is within that 16%, one in 4 women, only 1 in 10 men. That's a whole nother podcast that I just wanted to say. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, women, always.
Very interesting data. It's really interesting around that 60%. A couple of things that surprised us. Sometimes a non-result is as interesting as a result. One of the things that was surprised us is we were surprised that there wasn't more differential around level. So we expected to see a real difference in seniority, and specifically around wisdom. We just made the assumption that people that were, and by the way, I should say that data that I shared, that's not based on leaders rating themselves. That is employees rating their leaders. So this is in the eyes of the employees. So based on 360 data, do I see you as a leader as being able to demonstrate these qualities of awareness, wisdom, and compassion, which is quite different than when leaders rate themselves. So what's interesting is that I would say, though, that still our experience working with leaders is that most more senior leaders have figured out how to manage their mind, how to manage their time, which is a lot around the importance of awareness. Do I know what to focus on? When am I able to read the tea leaves to be able to say this is most important and I can let this go? Most of them have a good North Star, which is really around that wisdom capacity. And that's why it is the one that we emphasize. I do think especially more senior leaders struggle with the compassion piece. And oftentimes what we do see, and what's really interesting, is that we see as leaders rise in ranks, their ability to engage in a compassionate way in the eyes of their employees goes lower. And that we find really interesting. And it makes sense because, of course, as you rise in ranks, you're making bigger decisions that affect more people. Have a bigger span of control, and you don't necessarily have those same touch points. And so it makes sense that a leader might be seen as being less compassionate. But the key thing is that we also see leaders that use that as an excuse. And what we see is there's a real opportunity, because we know just because you have a big span of control, we know that doesn't mean that you can't show up with compassion. That compassion piece is probably the one that all leaders can develop. And I would say at more lower levels of leaders, we do see a lot of that awareness, right? It is that starting point, because you can't really dive into wisdom and compassion if you don't have good awareness about what might be getting in your way, if you can't manage your mind and manage your time. We were surprised that there wasn't more differential by seniority, but that is our experience working with many leaders over the past decade.
It's really interesting to see that, but I could also see why it's probably the lowest with compassion, just given when you grow.
Yeah.
If your organization isn't going to give you opportunities to nurture these things while we're going through this massive technological shift at work, what are simple ways people can start to nurture these three qualities in themselves today?
Yeah, I love that question. And I've always been inspired by the quote, be the change you want to be in the world. If you want to be a good human being, which is really around what these skills are, be present, be wise, be caring. And those are, I think, key things in terms of your own brand. And of course, there's a lot of resources. Of course, our book is one resource to be able to provide some practical tools around it. Probably the starting point is really around the intentionality. And we oftentimes, when we work with leaders, we look to be able to have simple brain hacks to be able to help you in this moment. Like, what's your intention? And right now, my intention is to be of service. That's my intention. It's you ask me a question, I'm going to try to be of best service. And just those simple things can really help us as leaders. When I show up for my team, it's like, I just want to be present, and I want to be able to support everybody in the best way possible. I'm just going to be a good listener, whatever it is. The starting point for all of us is really around setting our intentions and using that as our North Star, because we know being a leader today is really hard. Let's be real.
Yeah, I think if that's all you can do is set the intention and always go in with, that's always a good starting point.
Then afterwards, have opportunities for reflection, say, how did I do? And then you get that learning cycle. So these were my intentions. This is how I wanted to show up in this meeting. And then to give myself the space and the grace to be able to say, okay, how did I do? What did I learn? What do I want to implement for tomorrow?
I want to talk a little bit more about the both and, because I feel like there is this reality, especially with folks right now. Their companies are probably like, get to know AI, understand AI. Your job's not going to go away. The person who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. We're hearing all of the tropes. And we know that those folks that lean into these really more human skills are the ones that are really going to thrive, not only for themselves, but honestly for their team. Who wouldn't want to work with a leader like that? Yeah. I'm curious about how people can start to tiptoe into this, especially that both end thinking, and really make the power of AI and our human capabilities work.
It's really the best marriage of mind and machine. And the way that we look at it, and this was really based on hundreds of interviews that we did and also our data collection. But when we looked at each of these different qualities, there's a really nice kind of both and aspect of looking, well, what's the best of tech and what's the best of human? And so for awareness, the way that we framed it is in terms of AI is amazing at content, like more content than any of us could ever grasp. But human beings are amazing at context. Why am I here? What's important? What are my intentions? What else is going on? What else is relevant? And that ability to be able to marry that context setting with then leveraging content is a way to be able to get the best of both. On the wisdom side, AI is amazing. Any question that you have, it'll give you an answer. And what humans, though, are really good at, if we have the time and space, is really good at being curious, beginner's mind, like to being able to think outside the box, and our critical thinking to be able to, when we get an answer from AI, I'm not really sure that's a good answer. What would be another question? So this marriage of questions and answers is a way to, again, really have that both and thinking. And then on the compassion side, the way that we looked at the both and was really human beings fundamentally are able to connect with their ability to care, their ability to create trust, their ability to look at you and say, I care about you, you're important to me. and to be able to lead with heart. And AI, like I said, it's programmed with all of the best knowledge of human behavior, emotional intelligence. And so another both and is to be able to say, okay, I care about you guys. And how can I be able to use that care and leverage AI to be able to help me, because we have to have a difficult conversation or we need to move an agenda forward and I don't know where to start, but I want to be able to engage us in that process. And so those are some of the key things that we really see as being a way to be able to marriage the best of both mind and the best of both technology.
Do you see that changing as AI gets more agentic and gets
Yeah.
smarter? Do you see this changing, or do you see these are evergreen?
It was one of the questions that we asked and that we continue to ask in our research. And so far, we do see that these are evergreen. And that's why I think it's so interesting is that even though AI is getting better at, let's say, context, it still doesn't have the amazing wealth of understanding and experience that a human does. And I think that even when we look at agentic AI, like it still is at this point in time, and again, we're looking at a horizon of the next 3 to 5 years, it still needs to be told what to do. It still needs to have ground rules, and it still is limited in terms of what it can do. And even though it's got a really big box, thinking outside that box is still something that is in the realm really of still of us mere mortals. So at least for the next 3 to 5 years, we see these as evergreen, and hopefully that leading with heart. Our aspiration and our hope is that will always be augment with AI, but something that is evergreen in terms of bringing out the best of our human leadership.
I also am really taken with your finding about, even though AI can communicate with emotion, if you will,
Yeah.
people, when they found out that the bot or the chatbot was a chatbot, they were left feeling empty. I'm very taken with the fact that people still innately want a human, right? And
Yeah.
I wonder if that's never going to change, even when AI becomes like Minority Report and Singularity and all this good jazz.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wonder if there's some sort of magic juju that we're always going to want a human no matter what. And these things are always going to be the case.
Yeah, I deeply hope so. And I do think that is the case. The problem though is that these are at risk. Our human connectivity, we know that there's an epidemic of loneliness, and this was before Gen AI came out. And we know that organizations that are heavily AI dependent, people feel even less connected and more lonely. Why? For a number of reasons. One, because people overuse the technology, right? They use the technology to be able to send a message that really should be a conversation. But we also know that because when an organization that's heavily embedded with AI, people aren't asking each other questions. They're using AI to be able to ask the questions, so they're not turning to their neighbors. And the other thing, critical thinking. We know that 74, the recent study, this wasn't ours, but a recent study showed 74% of leaders are so overwhelmed that they would prefer to have a chatbot make their decisions. And that's scary, but real, right? And so I think that the problem right now is that our awareness, our wisdom, and compassion is under threat because of AI. It's creating, we're more distracted. We have the risk of, I will say, instead of being wiser, actually being dumber if we delegate our decisions to AI, and being more disconnected. And what we really need to do, and I think that's why conversations like this are so important, we need to be really intentional about overcoming these real risks of artificial intelligence so that we're able to leverage the benefits and not get sucked into kind of the dark side of where the future of work could be going if we're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering what you'd recommend. Let's say somebody is, I'll take myself for example, and I know a lot of people I talk to are the same way, right? They have a large language model. They're using Chat, GPT, Claude, Perplexity, whatever, doesn't matter. They're using that. It's their little assistant on this side. They're using it more and more each day. They're reaping the benefits of the efficiency of it. And maybe slowly they're talking to humans less and less by 30 minutes
Yeah.
each week.
Yeah.
How do they like break that cycle potentially, and or make sure that they're like carving out space for more of the more human attributes? Like, you know how people have phone addictions? It's just put it
Yeah.
away, walk away from it.
Yeah.
What do people need to be really thinking about so they don't get into the trap of only using their large language model?
First of all, I love the question because I do agree. We do know that people are addicted to their phones. Many programs actually that we do with leaders, one of the most simplest intervention that we do is we take away their devices, and you should see the looks on their faces. Like it's just we've taken out their heart. Like how could what? I'm going to be disconnected. And it's so interesting that they actually do go through withdrawal symptoms because they're not like, oh my gosh, what if somebody needs me? And it's really interesting. Many of us are addicted to our technology. And I do think that with these tools, because they are the large language models, as you said, they talk to us really nicely. They're designed to please. They're really engaging to be able to have conversations with. And they never get mad at us like real human beings, real colleagues do. And they're designed to suck us in. These are not altruistic devices that have been created for the best of intentions. And so they're designed to suck us in all different kinds of ways. So what I love about your question is that we need to be able to make sure that we stay in the driver's seat. Back to the Ferrari analogy, we need to be able to make sure that we're in the driver's seat of our technology and that we recognize, because many of us think we're smarter than our smartphones and we're not. Like, our smartphones are designed to be addictive. And until we wake up to that fact, we'll think, oh, I'm not addicted to my phone. It's like, all right, let me take it away. Oh, wait a minute. So I think that we need to be aware that these tools are designed to be able to suck us in and really promote use, which again is wonderful because they're really useful to be able to help support us in our daily activities. We need to be really practical, like you say. Put the device away, get up, go for a walk, put the device away, have a conversation, put the device away, take some time for reflection in terms of enhance your creativity, enhance your ability to be able to think outside the box. So I think that you need brain hacks to be able to help you to not get sucked into the technology because they're designed to be addictive. They put us in echo chambers, and that's another risk that we need to be intentional about to overcome.
Yeah. It's a very odd feeling when you realize you're addicted to your phone, even the muscle memory of reaching for your phone. The other day, I have Claude and I have ChatGPT, and I have found I have started going straight there as opposed to, wait, what do I really think? What do I really need to be researching? And so it's almost not getting rid of the muscle or not making sure I have atrophy or like human atrophy or addiction. And it is a job. That is a very intentional practice, but I think it's needed.
Yeah. What I loved about what you said is exactly that. It's got to be a practice. Exactly. It's so easy. Let's say I've got a brainstorm. I need to write a new article. And it's so easy to go into whatever tool that you're using and say, all right, write an article for me in the style of HBR. I could even write an article that Jacqueline Carter would write in HBR based on, because it does have access to the web. And it's so tempting. What I loved about what you said is, no, I've got to force myself. It's like going to the gym. I've got to force myself to make sure I continue to go to the gym. And that's the other analogy that we use oftentimes when we're talking about AI and how it can augment. It's like looking at it like an exoskeleton, right? So an exoskeleton, we know that it helps us to be able to enhance our strength. And AI can be like an exoskeleton that can really help us to augment our mind and augment our heart. But if we don't at the same time develop our mind and our heart, it's going to atrophy. Just if we just let that exoskeleton do all the work, our muscles will atrophy. And I think what you said is exactly, it's a practice to be, wait a minute, what do I think? How would I write this article? Wait a minute, what do I know before I go to my tool? What would be a good way to be able to create this presentation or to be able to have this conversation? And then augment with the tool to be able to help you, but don't lose the muscle. And I think that's exactly it. We're really at risk of losing some of these core fundamental muscles like critical thinking, like emotional intelligence, because we're over relying on our technology.
The addiction to your phone is so real. I don't know if I don't remember where I saw this, but someone mentioned if you start to have this little indent on your pinky finger where you hold your phone, that means like you forever have changed like the bone structure of your finger from where you hold your cell phone. And I looked down and I was like, is that a dent? And I started to slowly back away. So for anyone listening, check your pinky. When you think about getting into some of those ethical guardrails, as we're talking about not letting these muscles atrophy, we're introducing this to teams. Francesca and I are trying to advise folks on like how to introduce this to your team without fear, or like testing and learning in a safe way. Given everything that you've researched, what's like a one sentence AI policy for a leadership team?
Oh, I love that. One sentence policy, I would say, is human in the driver's seat, is do not allow these tools to overcome your human judgment, your human responsibility, your human accountability, and be aware of the seductive nature of these technologies to be able to to delegate decisions. If I was going to have one word policy, it would be always human in the driver's seat. And then, of course, you said just one, but I do think we are deeply concerned about considerations about using these technologies in terms of the environmental impact. We are concerned about data security and privacy, which is already a concern. It was a concern before artificial intelligence, and now all of this information and who's storing this information and how is it being used. So there's a long list, but the one is the human in the driver's seat.
Oh, by the way, the smartest policy possible when you're looking at that Workday class action lawsuit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I love to hear it. When you think about the case studies, because you had multiple that were highlighted in the book, case studies that during your research that kept you up at night, could be good or bad. But was there one case study in particular that kept you up at night?
There was one. We didn't put it in the book. So we had the privilege of being able to talk to chief people officers, chief learning officers, CEOs, as well as tech leaders. And probably the story that scared us the most, and we were shocked by this, and I will not say the name of the company, but it was a story. We were sitting down with the chief human resource officer of a global technology company. And she told us a story about a senior executive in the organization that had been basically deep faked by somebody posing as the CEO of that company and was about to transfer millions of dollars. And it scared the bejeebies out of us. And this was actually like a year and a half ago. And I think it gets back to, we all think that we're smarter than our smartphones. We think we're smarter than our devices. Yeah. But it was unbelievable, because I would think, oh, that would never happen to me. And when she talked about this case, like, the guy had emails from his CEO, he had text messages, he had video little snippets telling him he was on a secret project and not to tell anybody about it. And it had been an extensive scam that had been over multiple months. And this guy had absolutely no idea. And he had been completely hoodwinked by it. And it was just like, whoa, so that was really scary.
Yeah, as the video continues to get better and better, on TikTok, right? Has anyone seen the fake Tom Cruise?
Oh, fake Tom Cruise is crazy.
Yeah. You're like, what is this?
And I think it's scary. It is really scary. And I do think that we are so susceptible to, if we see something, even if somebody says that it's created by artificial intelligence, we have a tough time unseeing it. It's part of our neurology, right? Like, we trust what we see. And that is how our brain has been designed and wired over so many centuries. And so even if somebody says, oh yeah, that was fake, it still sticks with us because we saw it. So it's real. And so I think one of the bigger, larger concerns that we have is just around the continued what's real, what's not real, fact versus fiction. But not only that, like, how we are so influenced by our quote unquote peers, our tribes, and how, again, social media. And I think that's one of the things that we focused a lot on. Human beings have always had an amazing history of introducing new technologies without necessarily looking at the negative potential consequences. Social media was designed to make us better connected. And how's that working out? Email was supposed to save us a ton of time. I don't know. And so I think that's, for us, one of the big things is that really started to scare us when we started to look at this technology, is how fast it's moving, how fast it's being pushed. Like, every organization right now, and if they're not, they should be, is pushing adoption of AI. And they should, right? Because they got to get ahead all their competitors. So every organization is pushing adoption. But I don't think we're spending enough time thinking about, wait a minute, like, what are the potential consequences of this adoption? And are we taking the time to pause and say, what are we potentially at risk? And that's really a lot of the work that we do with leaders, is we talk about the adoption and how to be able to embrace it. And we talk about, I think, Francesca, to your point, like, how to have the brain hacks that you say, put away the device. Let's just make sure I'm still using that muscle that I have as a good leader, as a good human being.
Okay, Jacqueline, are you up for some rapid round?
I am. I'm a little bit scared, honestly, Mel, because I don't know what's coming, but bring it on. I love it.
I promise these are harmless and fun, and hopefully you will have fun with them too. Okay. It is 2030. not far off, by the way.
Yeah.
What's work going to look like?
No idea. Very simple. Anybody
Okay.
that tells you that they know what the future of work looks like is making things up. I can tell you two things, though, that I know for sure about the future of work in 2030. The first thing is it is fundamentally AI enabled, and it doesn't look anything like what we see it as today. And the second thing, and this is both my prediction and also my aspiration, so there's a little bit of hopefulness, is that those of us that are able to double down on the best of our humanity will be the ones that are thriving in the world of work in 2030.
I love to hear that. What's one thing about corporate culture you're ready to see die already? You're actually excited it might be gone by 2030.
I do think that there are so many. You guys, of course, have been around the halls of the corporate world for so long. There are so many bureaucratic tendencies, box checking, ticking activities, reports that nobody reads, emails that are just out of control. And I guess I am really excited about the opportunity for us to rethink work, so that what work really becomes is the opportunity for us to really thrive in terms of human connection. Ultimately, the opportunity for us to be able to inspire each other, to be able to connect with each other. That's the way we get great ideas. That's the way we build trust. That's the way we engage our customers in a way that makes them feel, wow, these are awesome people to work with. And I just think there are still so many bureaucratic elements of work today that we've been talking about for years to be able to let go of. So I hope to see those shift. And probably I'll say one thing is meetings where nobody knows why they're there and there's no agenda and everybody thinks it's a waste of time. That anytime we can get rid of that, let's do it now.
There was a tool that was out a few years ago. Francesca and I were like, how do we tap into this? That used to tell people, I forget who was using it, but I read this article where one organization, anytime they set up a meeting, it told you the potential cost of that meeting based on who was in the room. And I'm like, that's genius. We all need that.
Nice. And of course, it's something we can get into, but a lot of AI tools, if we use them well, like they can give us a summary. Was this a good use of time? Did everybody contribute? What were some things that there's a great tool right now that you can say, could this meeting have been an email? AI can really help us to be able to look at the quality of our human interaction and help us to be able to lean more into that if we use it well.
If we use it, that's the key word. You might have already answered this, but I want to ask just in case you have a different response. But what is the greatest opportunity most organizations are missing out on right now?
Yeah, human potential. I think that right now there is so much focus on AI. And of course, we just wrote a book and we're doing research on it. And I think there's so much focus on the technology. And organizations are missing out on, and they're investing, and organizations, I get it, like they're investing so much money on the technology. They're missing out on the opportunity to really develop and support and leverage the best of our human capabilities. And that is what's going to enable us to be able to use these tools well and be able to get the return on investment of these amazing technologies.
Yeah. Okay. It's getting a little personal. What music are you listening to right now? What's on your playlist?
Oh my gosh. Okay, that was it's so funny. I have to say that I was just with a girlfriend over the weekend and we were laughing about like 80s music that we still love to be able to go back to as a go-to. And so I have to say I'd love to try to pretend that I'm hip and current, but people would laugh at me if I tried to pretend that. Yeah, 80s, 90s, those are my go-to. But I love Pink these days. I don't know why. She just really is inspiring to me. And I guess she's current, so maybe that would be my lead into modern music tech in this age.
Perfect. I'm not going to judge your 80s and 90s because I'm right along with you. I was listening to Cyndi Lauper yesterday on my drive.
Yes.
So
girls just want to have fun. How can you go wrong with that?
No judgment. What are you reading right now? It could be an audiobook. It could be like the old school, turn the page. What's on your reading docket?
Yeah, I'll tell you what book I just finished, which I just loved. I just finished Nexus, and I am old school. I travel all the time, and I tried to use audiobooks, and I love, actually, I'm a tactile reader. I just love being able to and so Nexus is a really thick book, and so carrying it around has been a real chore, but that means every time I open it up, and I just loved it. I think that that I think that he provides such a fantastic, interesting insight on democracy and information technology, and just recognizing some real risks that we're facing with these new technologies, and of course the state of the world. And so I love books like that. So it's a great read.
Okay. Who do you really admire?
Oh my gosh, there's so many people that I admire. As soon as you said that, I guess that's what rapid fire is all about. The first person that came to mind is Michelle Obama. She just came to mind. But I guess in my work, I've been so privileged to work with senior leaders. And I could name so many of them, but particularly chief people officers right now that are really in a challenging position where they know the future of work, as we've talked about, is going to radically change. And they need to hold that space where there's so much fear. And at the same time, and they need to be honest, because there are changes coming in terms of workforce transformation. And anyway, so I really admire a lot of the chief people officers. So a big shout out to all of them that are standing in this space at this major inflection point in work and being able to lead with courage, with care, but also with clarity and with integrity.
Yeah. I know HR always has the tough job, right? Because you're in the sandwich between the board and the employees, and like what that looks like. You're always in the middle, but always with the best intentions, hopefully. And if they read your book, for sure, they'll have some good guidance there.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's a piece of advice that you want everyone to know?
I think, this is such a good question. I think lean in. I think that it is, at least in my career and my life, I've always trusted my gut, even when I was afraid. And I always like the definition of courage is to step into places that scare you. And I think that there is a lot for us to be fearful of, whether it's fearful of social rejection, right? There's so much tension in terms of having a tough conversation, or whether it's concerns about, will I have the skills that I need in the future? And I guess just, leaning into the places that scare you and recognizing that you're not alone, and being willing to have courage and take risks. And I'm not saying I always do that, but that's advice I try to give myself, and hopefully maybe that'll be helpful for others.
Yeah, I think it's good advice, right? Like, we're in a time where we're all learning, so now's a good time to have that courage. Where can listeners stay in touch with you, stay in touch with what you're doing? What's the best way to stay connected?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me and find me on LinkedIn, and please feel free to reach out. But also, as I said, I represent an amazing organization, Potential Project, www.potentialproject.com. And a lot of the research that I shared is freely available. So you don't want to buy the book, that's okay. But a lot of the research we post on our website, and we love to. And you can also follow us on Potential Project, where we share, because this is an ongoing research and insights. And a great way. And then just to be able to keep in touch and reach out.
Perfect. And we'll link to all of that in our show notes too, so folks can get easy access to that. Thanks for joining us today, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much. I just love this conversation, and thank you so much for both being intentional and also really future focused in our discussion today.
Appreciate it. This episode was produced, edited, and all things by us, myself, Mel Plutt, and Francesca Ranieri. Our music is by Pink Zebra. And if you loved this conversation and you want to contribute your thoughts with us, please do. You can visit us at yourworkfriends.com, but you can also join us over on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn community page, and we have the TikToks and Instagram. So please join us in the socials. And if you like this and you've benefited from this episode and you think someone else can benefit from this episode, please rate and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. That helps keep us going.
Take care, friends.
Right. Bye, friends.
Bye, friend.